All right, good evening. This is the March 25th Public Works Commission meeting for the city of Watertown. I will call it to order and stipulate that we have a quorum present. I will go to item number 2, comments and suggestions from citizens present. Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions for the commission? Okay, not seeing any. I'll go to item 3. The approval of the Public Works minutes from March 11th of 2025. Any comments or questions? You guys have been really kind. You haven't made any corrections lately. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, anyone opposed? Item 4 then is our business. A is review and take possible action, award the 2028 Labrie Street STP Urban Design Project to McMahon and Associates for $199,417. Mr. Byer?
All right, I'm actually going to turn this one over to our staff engineer, Nathan Williams. He put together the RFP and then facilitated the scoring for these proposals. So Nathan, take it away.
So the Public Works Department has received, evaluated, and ranked all of the proposals for the 2028 Labrie Street SDP Urban Design Project. This project includes design for street reconstruction, storm sewer reconstruction, water main replacement, sanitary sewer force main replacement, and accessibility upgrades on Labrie streets between Boughton Street and Ann Street. After ranking these proposals through a qualifications-based selection system, the Public Works Department recommends awarding this design contract to McMahon Associates for a lump sum of $199,417.
Gentlemen, any questions?
I do. Yeah, in your memo, under financial impact, you have a line in there, it says additional funds were budgeted for this project as it was anticipated to exceed standard design costs. Can you explain that?
Sure. So this is part of a STP urban state grant program. So there are some additional reporting requirements tied to this design. The construction cost for this is split 80-20, generally speaking, where 80% of eligible costs are funded by state and feds, and then 20% is funded by the city. But to be competitive, we're proposing design be funded with 100% city dollars. So we would just be kind of accounting for those extra reporting requirements associated with the design.
Okay, thanks.
I thought this project was going to include, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat, was going to include the parking lot. Is that true?
It may, the STP and the road utility portion of it is going to be separate from that though. So if the parking lot is included, it would be included kind of as a standalone side-by-side project. But as far as timing goes, it would make a lot of sense to have both of them go in 2028 while the road's under construction, doing the parking lot at that time too.
Would that, so I assume that's going to add engineering costs?
Not to this contract, and if we would outsource it, we would do another request for proposals. If it's something we could take on in-house, we certainly would. I know Christine with our park department has a master plan budgeted for Riverside Park, which that project might be wrapped into that study. But we've at least had talks internally at a staff level on kind of linking those two projects up.
And why are we stopping at Ann Street?
Good question. Originally, we had this going all the way to 4th Street. And upon inspection of the pavement changes at Ann Street, and it's in relatively good condition between Ann Street and 4th Street. And to be competitive with the grants, we thought the cutoff point made sense to take care of the poor pavements and the poor utilities between Ann and Boughton. So that was kind of the determination for the cutoff there.
What's the construction duration for a project of this size?
We believe it's going to be one season. We understand that Riverfest uses Labrie Street in this area, so we'd
That
want
was
to.
my next question.
Yeah, we thought about this one. we'd want to make sure that we put into the contract special provisions to account for Riverfest and kind of coordinate construction around that event.
So in other words, allow the event to occur during construction? Is that what you're implying?
Before getting into the design, yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking. Barring any concerns or, constraints in the design or with the state, that's our intention.
Okay, my one last complicated question then is impact of this construction while at the same time we're reconstructing Main Street. Any thoughts on that? Have you guys considered that? What the impact would be?
Yeah, we don't think it'll be huge. There might be some traffic that cuts through on Laborie Street now between Division and Fourth. But I think there's options out there to kind of avoid both construction areas and still get to where you need to go.
I guess my bigger question is you're effectively shutting down two major portions of the city in the same summer.
Hmm.
I just wondered if there'd been any conversation about that and what impact that would have. I guess I'm
Okay.
not objecting to doing it. I'm just
Sure.
asking the questions.
They are two big projects, yeah. Yeah, with the traffic control, we'd have to make sure that, things are detoured and signed appropriately. As best as we can.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking about the economic impact. Yeah, you shut down Main Street and then you eliminate all the activities at Riverside Park, right?
Yeah.
Those are major activities during the summertime for economic benefit to the city.
Sure. And there are other access points to the park, but, Laborie Street being the big one.
Okay, gentlemen, those are my questions.
Good questions.
Picking up on the question relating to the partial area of reconstruction, not from Ann to Fourth Street, you indicated that the condition was much better in that section than the part that's being reconstructed. Is there any specific plan to complete Laborie in some future budget? For instance, is it part of the capital plan for any of the 5 out years?
Not currently. I think right now the pacer rating between Ann and Fourth Street sits at around a 6 or a 7. It was recently seal coated. But as it deteriorates, we'd want to make sure that it does get into a 5-year capital plan for resurfacing or something to that nature.
Okay, and so was it your statement that the reason that it wasn't included, all of Laborie in this one grant application was because we wanted to make the grant application more competitive, and had we done the whole street, it would have been less competitive?
That was our thought process. We thought that if we included the portion of the street that was in relatively okay condition, we would score less favorably.
Okay. Okay, and I have just one other question. In a previous but recent meeting, we had a breakdown of the QBS process that was used. And in that instance, it indicated that there was a weighting of 30% for cost. Is it the same QBS process and percentages that's used across the board?
It's a similar ranking. I think cost, and Nathan, jump in if I'm off. I think it's around 20%.
It's 25% for this project.
So it varies between projects, because I'm pretty sure it was 30% at another point. What establishes the allocation of weight between projects if it's not uniform?
I can't speak to past projects. I think generally for our engineering design projects, it's right around that 25%. I'd have to check what we've done in years past, but 25% rings a bell. McMahon on this one was low as far as cost goes. But I believe 25% is right around where we hover in our ranking table.
Okay, yes, it is a moot issue relating to this
Mhm.
because presumably, it's in alignment with cost, whether a QBS process was used or a strict bid process. But I guess my point is, I'm concerned about the low percentage that cost has in the QBS evaluation. And whether it's 25% or 30%, it is a relatively small percentage. And in some of the recent instances, the non-low bidder was selected and the difference was quite substantial. I believe the last one was 14 or 15,000, where the non-low bidder was selected. At what point did we establish the percentages for the QBS? And I guess I'm surprised that it is not at least the same across all of the QBS evaluations, but has varying percentages. And I wonder about that. And I also wonder how long it's been since the general categories and rough percentages were determined, how long ago that has been since that was reviewed and determined to be appropriate, that cost is that small a percentage.
We hear you. We've been doing a lot of requests for proposals this year, just with a lot of different grant and design projects we have in the next few years. Nathan, one thing he's working on is a standard request for proposal form where it's a more consistent form that we're going to be using. So it's something that we've identified. We haven't looked at it in that capacity for a few years, so.
Well, I was going to ask if might it not be a good time to have that reviewed? It sounds to me like that is under internal evaluation within your department. And I guess what I would request is at the point, hopefully relatively soon, that is completed within the Public Works Division, that is it your intent to bring that to the committee for adoption on a across-the-board basis?
We certainly can. Yeah,
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
I think that probably would be a wise idea over the next couple of months to do that, right?
Yep, that's no problem.
The, gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
I make a motion to adopt this recommendation. Recommendation for our commission, and that the McMahon bid be approved.
I do have one last favor. Reading the contract documents, a couple of places it goes Division Street to Ann, a couple of places it says Boughton to Ann.
Okay.
Technically, it's Division to Ann. I'm not real sure where Boughton starts. I live on it, but I have no idea where it begins. But I'm pretty sure that that intersection is Division and Library.
Okay, noted. I always thought the bridge was the dividing point, but good to know.
Okay, anything else? Motion with support, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll move on. Item B, review and take possible action, the Rock River District Vision Infrastructure items. Mr. Becker, is this yours?
This is mine. Yeah, thank you for having me here. And I don't know why that is doing that. That was, my phone has a mind of its own,
It's called
apparently.
technology.
I'm gonna share the screen. Tonight I'm here to talk about the infrastructure components of the Rock River District Vision Plan. Making sure that works. Rock River District Vision. We're going to talk about the preliminary budget and the long-term sequencing plan that we've come up for this project. And I think by the time we walk through everything, I think and hope that everybody in this room is going to find this a lot less intimidating than maybe it sounds like initially. So a couple things I want to point out for the members of the commission here this evening. I handed you 3 different handouts here. This kind of legal sized breakdown that says ADK at the top. This is what was given to us by Rinka, which is the firm that we've engaged with to do the planning for this project. Don't get too hung up on this sheet itself. I just wanted to provide this as background for where the numbers I'm using and where they're coming from. The smaller sheet is more relevant to you and what we're going to be walking through tonight. And then I've also included a map for you that has labels that we will reference as we go through this discussion. So what are we going to cover here tonight? We're going to give you just a quick overview of the Rock River District Vision that the RDA has been working on for over a year now. We'll talk about some of the major components of the project. I'll walk the commission through the proposed sequencing for this plan, and then we'll talk about a couple next steps. So I included a memo that you should have gotten in your agenda packet, and it just talked about some of the history of this concept of a river walk in downtown Watertown and how we got here. As noted, this idea has been percolating for over 40 years in Watertown. What we're building on right now is not exactly new. We're building on some work that was done by Vanderwall in the early 2000s, and then a document done by Redevelopment Resources in the mid-2010s. Yep. Oh, why is that not working? Okay, thank you. We'll see if Andrew can figure out that wizardry. Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. As noted in the city's comprehensive plan that was updated in 2019, we see this as the next logical step. There's multiple places in that plan that talk about 3 things that the city should get done. One was expanding and renovating the public library. Second was building a town square. And the third was creating a river walk. That's referenced multiple times in that document. So I won't go over all of it, but in late 23, early 24, we put out an RFP. 8 firms responded, and the RDA selected Rinka and Kapoor to work with. As part of the process, we engaged in public input sessions. There were 2 public open houses. We had steering committee meetings, and there was a robust amount of public input and feedback. In later 2024, the Rock River District Vision Plan was presented to the Plan Commission, and the consensus was that they gave us the thumbs up to keep moving and continue working on this project. So just some things I want to talk about before I walk you through the kind of the cadence or the sequencing. The estimates are preliminary. They were done by a third-party firm with experience in estimating for public infrastructure projects. They are in 2025 dollars. I have not adjusted anything forward for inflation. The concepts you're going to see are just purely that, concepts, ideas. We do not have architectural design plans or anything like that. The proposed schedule is tentative and it's meant to be flexible. We know there will be adjustments. But one of the goals I have here tonight in coming to you is I don't want to keep talking about the Rock River District Plan and the Riverwalk as a idea for the future. I'm hoping that we can establish a framework to help us achieve some goals. We're not trying to lock in every single piece tonight. A few things on the components you'll hear about here. We're talking about primarily poured or precast concrete. They'll include metal railings designed for the outdoors. They do include lighting. If new seawall is possible, and a lot of that hinges on various DNR approvals, there'll likely be a metal sheet pile with concrete caps, similar to what we have down at the Benson Family Town Square. And obviously, again, concept images are not engineered designs. So here's just a couple quick example images. The one on the left kind of shows an example of a walkway using the materials I just mentioned, concrete decks with Corten steel structures intended for outdoor, relatively maintenance-free use. And then the seawall, again, would be that type you see at the Benson Family Town Square. So where are we starting from? There's already some work going on this year, and I just wanted to highlight this. This isn't anything the RDA dreamed up. This is work that was already planned by our Public Works Department, and a lot of it had been in front of this body already. In 2025, there's going to be a little bit of rehab work along the current boardwalk, kind of on the southeast quadrant of the Rock River District area. That's already planned and budgeted for. And then the city will move into design and permitting for the existing Riverwalk across the river over by the Globe. That's already budgeted for as well. Later this year, the city is going to engage in installation of the concrete ramp at the plaza. I know the city's been waiting on that for a long time. That's southeast corner of the Main Street Bridge, which also will hopefully be done soon. And that's already in the city budget, and that's estimated for. I included those numbers in the spreadsheet I gave you just because I wanted to show this all kind of ties together, and I want you all to have a full, clear picture of what's happening. So moving into the future, 2026, this is also planned work, repair work on the existing Riverwalk over by the Globe, which would be planned this year. That is already budgeted for. Hopefully city crews will be able to complete that. If not, there'll be an additional cost to that. And then also, we included Fannie Lewis Park in kind of our vision for the area. While the Riverwalk won't directly connect to Fannie Lewis Park, we were hoping that people will be able to access the park. And we just wanted to note that next year, there is planned riprap replacement work along the shoreline. That's being primarily funded through a DNR grant. And one thing I want to remind everybody, as we walk through this, the RDA is planning to seek grants for a lot of these project pieces. And we know it's not all going to be publicly funded or funded by taxpayer dollars. Continuing on into 2026, this is where we start working on some design work. If you look at that southwest quadrant on your map, the final piece of the Riverwalk would be located just south of the Benson Family Town Square. I know everybody's been waiting for a project to develop on that site for some time. As some of you likely recall, we are engaged in a pre-development agreement with Intrepid Investments, and hopefully they'll be bringing forward a multi-family housing project, which would likely be constructed next year on that site. So again, this would be for design work for that piece. And then the city is also planning design and planning for repair along the existing edge south of the dam by the Senior and Community Center. Is everybody kind of with me so far? Does this all sound good? All right. Thank you. 2027, moving on into the future. That's when we would target installation of that final piece south of the Benson Family Town Square. You can see the current cost estimate for that piece, which would connect to the town square and go south towards the Globe and beyond. This would also be when the city would plan for that repair work to be done. near the Senior and Community Center, including riprap and possibly some concrete work. You can see the current estimate for that figure there. 2028, we all know there's a pretty big project plan for that year, right? So we are not proposing at this time to do any Riverwalk work that year. It seems like it would be a pretty good time to engage in some design work. So that's what we're going to be focused on in 2028 while the Main Street reconstruction happens. We're proposing design work for a walkway along the Masonic Temple building. Of course, that is a privately owned building. We would work with the property owner on that. And then there would be design work for portions going along the North First Street parking lot, which is labeled N2 on your map. And then design work for a Riverwalk adjacent to City Hall. So kind of trying to get that whole section designed that year. What I wanted to note along the North First Street parking lot, in the concept image that you can see in the PowerPoint on screen, it kind of shows it hanging off over the river. The actual cost of doing that would have been extremely high. So this quote is for designing an onshore option that would be, you know, above the seawall, walking along the river like you're kind of used to with the existing Riverwalk.
But you still have
I'll go
the
back to-
design along the Masonic Temple building proper
Correct.
that would have to be attached some way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have another way of getting around that.
It's fine.
Previous designs had that kind of going onto the street and around that block. We're hoping that we can
Right.
come up with something a little better. All right, and then continuing in 2028, two more design pieces, talking about design work for a Riverwalk along the former Breslow's and former Johnsonville site. At Plan Commission, for those of you who were able to attend yesterday, you did probably see that we now have a developer, Northtown Partners. They have the Johnsonville site under contract right now, and they are proposing a 68-unit apartment multifamily development. They are aware that they would need to leave an easement for a future Riverwalk. The Breslow's property is currently privately owned, but hopefully someday a Riverwalk along that would be possible as well. Then a bigger piece that we start planning for in 2028 is designing a pedestrian bridge north, we're calling it. Somebody can probably come up with a better name eventually, but that would be a new pedestrian walkway proposed north of the Katy Street Bridge. It would kind of stretch from the current former Johnsonville site across the river to Rock Road. Moving into 2029, we would be looking at installing that Riverwalk by City Hall, installing the Riverwalk along the current North First Street parking lot, and then installing the walkway along the Masonic Temple building. In the rendering that's in the background here, this looks north kind of from the current Breslow's property. You can see the Katy Street Bridge. You can see the existing cell phone tower by City Hall. They left that in there. And so just kind of an idea of what people would be looking at in the future. 2030, I mean, that feels a long ways off, but we know in city planning that comes relatively quickly, right? 5 years isn't a long time. We would be looking at installing that Riverwalk along Breslow's and the former Johnsonville site. We'd be looking at design work for the Riverwalk adjacent to where Bank First is located on that northwest side of the district and along the former Firehouse Lane site. You can see the view in the PowerPoint slide is from across the river. You've got that vacant lot right now. We're hoping to get that developed eventually, and a Riverwalk would be, of course, part of that. We would also be talking about design work for a Riverwalk in front of where Johnson Arms is. That would extend that stretch. And then design work for what's currently called Pedestrian Bridge South. That would be a new pedestrian bridge as well, just north of the Milwaukee Street Bridge. That's labeled item D on the map that you have in front of you. 2031, again, you can see current today, where Johnsonville Arms is and that former Firehouse Lane site. Hoping to get that developed, create a river walk. And in that section, the river walk would kind of hinge over the river by Johnson Arms and going around the what's called the Hurdle property by the Katy Street Bridge today. So that year, 2031, would include installing a river walk by Bank First and Firehouse Lanes and installing the river walk in front of Johnson Arms. And you can see the cost estimates there. And then the final 2 years are where we get those two final big pieces in place, hopefully. Construction of that north pedestrian bridge is estimated at just over $3.3 million. That's a very ambitious concept design. In talking with city staff, especially Maureen McBroom, our stormwater planner, who kind of knows some of the things that the DNR looks for, there's a good chance we might have to scale back this design a little bit. Not sure that we could get that many crossings over the river in one area. So just wanted to note that for awareness. Finally, 2033, that's the end of our journey and our 9-year plan that we've laid out. Construction of pedestrian bridge south. And just noting this one's a little bit more expensive due to the elevation changes from one side of the river towards the other. So went through the timeline. Any questions so far right now?
In your memo write-up, you talked about, in addition to city dollars, that it's anticipated there will be grant efforts and private fundraising, things of that sort. One thing I noticed wasn't in there was any contribution toward the Riverwalk by those who will be participating in future development along that river area served by the Riverwalk. Is that something that's envisioned as a potential additional means of funding?
I think it absolutely would be, and I think that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Absolutely. I mean, we're hoping that with some of these private development partners, we can figure out a way, either if they can directly contribute during their construction phase to either monetarily or plan to build a stretch of Riverwalk in front of their development. I think that's certainly an option. The other thing to note is that most of this project area is in TID number 8, which was just created, I believe, 4 years ago and has a good amount of expenditure life left. And I think either through those development agreements that we craft with those private developers you were noting, or through the TID number 8 project plan, when we'll have increment available in that TID fund, I think that could be another mechanism for constructing the Riverwalk.
And I have just another question. What is the main purpose that's envisioned for the pedestrian bridge on the north? It doesn't span an area too much distant from the Katy Street crossing. And I'm just wondering, is that envisioned to be a means of making more accessible the Fannie Lewis Park to the broader Riverwalk area? I mean, it doesn't actually connect, but it moves it much closer.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. We want to get more people over to Fannie Lewis Park so they can experience that. Could there be, I think part of it is, we want to expose people to, the part of the natural beauty of that area of the Rock River. If you look north there, I mean, it almost looks like a lake. It's a beautiful vista. The Katy Street Bridge is relatively narrow. You don't have a lot of room on the sidewalk there, and you're further away. I think we really latched onto that idea of having that focal point and that lookout point that you see jutting out north from that pedestrian bridge, I think it would really give people a really great experience to be able to see the Riverwalk, or excuse me, seeing the Rock River looking out north from that lookout point. But yeah, part of it was creating, if you've attended any of the presentations Rinka gave, we wanted to create a continuous Riverwalk experience, and that just seemed like a natural way to kind of loop it all together. And I had a couple more.
I think at both ends of the Riverwalk, we were trying to avoid crossing over vehicle bridges. That's why you have the south crossing, and that's the purpose of the north crossing north of Katy Street. So we're actually crossing on a Riverwalk. We're not crossing on a street. I think that just
Exactly.
creates additional safety. But the view from that particular walkway going across the river is going to be pretty spectacular. That is the widest part of the river in Watertown
Yeah.
for sure.
Great point. I have a couple more things I'll walk you all through. So this brings up the question everybody's asking, who's going to pay for it? And you can already probably hear your constituents asking, are my taxes going to go up? And our intentions with this project are not to raise taxes on people. We know, I sat through those presentations. I know the tough decisions you all have to make at budget time every year. So we've recognized from the beginning, it's going to require a mix of public, private, and grant dollars. And the RDA does intend to engage in fundraising to help offset these costs. One thing that I think was really helpful for the RDA board is we went out a few months ago and visited West Bend and toured their Riverwalk that they have. And it was really a spectacular project, and they did not raise taxes, or I believe they didn't even borrow money to fund that project. It was a mix of private donations, grants, and TIF funds as well that were used to create that. So we're looking to achieve a similar outcome here in Watertown. And you all know how generous the people have been here, and the business community and nonprofits have been. You look at the public library, the Benson Family Town Square, the new Tom and Mary Schultz Family YMCA. We've gotten some really big things done here in Watertown. And I believe the YMCA, they've raised around $20 million for that project. So I think what we're asking here is definitely achievable. So we really think the same is going to happen with this project, and City of Watertown is absolutely worth it. So, more than just showing you these pretty pictures and walking you through a timeline, what are we hoping to achieve here tonight? We're asking the Public Works Commission to take action. We're asking that the commission direct city staff to place the Rock River District infrastructure components into the city's capital improvement plan. So why now? We want to establish that timeline that I talked about at the beginning. We want to have a timeline framework so that we can help firm up those financial targets and start setting some goals for this project. And we all know the CIP changes every year. I know that if you put items in for next year, or 2 years from now, 5 years from now, they're not going to stay necessarily on that same calendar. We know items get added, subtracted, and moved in the CIP every year when you do that annual budget review process. So, and we know there's going to be opportunities, there's going to be some challenges, and we know that adjustments will need to be made along the way. So that's the totality of the presentation I had. Wanted to note a couple things on the spreadsheet that I gave you. This one here that kind of breaks it out year by year. The design work estimates were added in. I calculated those based on the estimates we got from Rinka for the infrastructure components. So that's why the grand total that you're seeing at the bottom of this sheet is a little bit more than that other sheet that came from their from ADK, their third-party estimators. So really, in totality, if we're looking at this and keeping in mind, this already includes some items the city has budgeted and been planning for. There are already some earmarks in the CIP budget. I'm hoping this total figure, given it's broken out over 9 years, hopefully that's not so intimidating.
Gentlemen, I sit on the RDA, so what questions do you have?
The requested recommendation is to move this into the capital improvement plan. Was this timeline that we have this evening, is this something that is just an initial staff suggestion? And who would it be that would implement the costs for the walkway, the extensive walkway, timeline into the capital improvement plan? Would that be a function of the, finance committee? Or I'm just seeing, where are we going to be moving into? Obviously, this is a committee review,
Yep.
but in terms of the financial side, I would envision that that would be a pretty extensive involvement by the finance committee. And obviously, there are some aspects that don't exactly overlap. The capital improvement plan is a 5-year plan. This extends out almost double that.
Yep.
And so I don't know whether we're envisioning the capital improvement plan to extend more years, or whether there would be parts of this left off, or whether it would be modified as issues become more clearly understood. And then I guess my basic question is, I think this has been a tremendous amount of work by the RDA. Obviously, you have done a lot of interface to put this together so that we have a much better idea on timelines and individualized costs and things like that. But I envision at some point, we're going to be moving to the point of the finance committee getting involved from the financial perspective. And I'm thinking maybe that first best point for that is an integration of the broader plan into the capital improvement projects document.
Yeah, I understand where I understand where you're coming from and asking. The timeline, this was kind of a back and forth. I did coordinate a little bit with Andrew and his team in looking at this, and also we got some we obviously got input from the RDA. But yes, you're correct. The CIP is typically a 5-year timeline. While I would have loved to work this whole project into a 5-year timeline, I think just given all the pieces and the total budget amount or the cost estimate, and then also knowing some of the other things that the city has on the horizon, like last night, Finance Committee discussed a future facilities plan. We have, I know the city has a lot going on. So while this wouldn't all be going in the next 5 years, I think I know Public Works has kind of an internal clock of future projects they look at beyond the next 5 years. So we would need to coordinate with Public Works, obviously. And then, all of these items would go through the normal approval process, so they would have to be reviewed by the Finance Committee every year to approve the spending that ultimately goes in front of the Common Council at the final budget.
And I would assume, Andrew, to what Mason just said, I'm going to guess you've got projects in 2030, 31, 32 that you're already thinking about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, you'd come forward November, December with what you want to add to the CIP for the next 5 years, right?
Correct, yeah. Like Mason said, we update that document every year, so it's reviewed by the finance committee as part of that budgeting process.
I think this is just a logical thing to do, right? I mean, obviously, as Mr. Smith said, if something happens and we just decide to extend the project, 2 years, we extend the project, but
Yeah.
you aim at nothing, you're bound to hit it. We might as well get started with some kind of a plan and put it in place, right? And eventually, yes, it has to go to the finance committee to get approvals. Right?
Correct.
Anybody else? So our request is simply to direct the city staff to place the Rock River District infrastructure components into the city's capital improvement plan.
That's correct.
So just for clarification, are you gonna put all 9 years into the plan, or are you just planning to?
I think we'll have to keep some of those extended ones internal. We'll work with Public Works as well as, of course, the finance director to work out what that calendar looks like as if it's a spreadsheet, if it's an internal document, you know.
Yeah, hey, Andrew, I don't want all your trade secrets, but do you have a 10-year plan?
Not officially, but we've, earmarked some street projects and things like that that extend beyond the 5-year.
I know they have a list. I've seen it on the whiteboard before, in engineering, so it does exist and yes.
And I'm certain you get requests from time to time. Yeah.
Mason, can you go to the previous screen where you had set out what you were hoping that we would be able to do this evening? That's it.
Yep, simply, we're just asking you to direct city staff to place the Rock River District infrastructure components into the, city's capital improvement plan. And again, as we all know, just to reiterate, this doesn't bind the city to following that timeline or spending that money in any given year. We know things will change year to year and choices always have to be made. And, this, I really think, will give the RDA, which I want to mention, I appreciate a few of the board members were able to be here tonight. I think this is going to kind of give the RDA the impetus to start that next phase, which is coming up with a fundraising plan and figure out what grants we're going to target and so forth. If we don't have a timeline, if it's still nebulous and a vague sometime in the future, years from now thing, that's not really going to give us direction to work under.
Well, I guess my thinking is this is a really good next step. I think what would be more accurate to the way I think this is going to work is that I would like to see the city staff produce a draft of the integration of the broader streetscape, Riverwalk plan into the capital improvement plan for submission to the finance committee is what I would say, because that's what's going to give it the legitimacy. In other words, the finance committee reviews the integration that the staff can well put together, and I think you've substantially all of that here, but then review it from the perspective of city review by the committee that I think should appropriately pick up this work and give it a more formal status.
I'm open to that idea, certainly. I think we just have to keep in mind, we'll be adding, based on what I have here, close to 18 million. I think people just have to realize, again, the intention isn't to ask the city to fund all of that. But I understand and appreciate what you're asking, work it into the broader picture, I think, of the other projects and initiatives the city will be engaging under.
There's an annual review and there's an ongoing expectation that everything that's envisioned for any particular year in the capital improvement plan is not going to be funded. But every year, the review results in unfunded projects moving forward, bumping other things. There's this constant ongoing refinement of the capital improvement plan. So I think you would start it. I don't see anything wrong with the approach that you're taking. I'm just envisioning, for instance, take 2028.
Mhm.
You have, even with no major projects for construction, you have about $800,000 worth of expenditures
Yeah.
in a year where we all know there are going to be extraordinary expenditures. So I'm thinking this is a working project. This is a good first step. I'd just like to see a recognition that the city staff will produce a draft and that it will go for review to the finance committee.
But isn't doing the simple motion that we've been requested to do effectively do that? We're asking the city staff to put it in the CIP, and the CIP will then go forward and be reviewed by finance and everybody else in this building. I mean, we're effectively doing what you just stated. We're asking the city staff to put this project information into the CIP, and then it will take its normal course of action. I agree with you. We're looking at $5 million or more to spend in 2028 on projects. I don't know if we'll have another 800,000 or not, but this starts the process, gives the RDA a chance to start doing their fundraising and identifying what they can and can't obtain financially. And then that gives us a chance to go back and revise the CIP forward. So I just think we're asking the staff to do exactly what you asked for. Put it in the CIP. Finance committee will eventually see it in the CIP, and the discussions will be held. I think the information Mason's given us is not a whole lot more than what Andrew would put in the CIP, right? It's a defined project with a defined budget. That's basically what we see.
And the CIP is one of the tools the finance committee uses during budgeting.
Absolutely. And if they put it in the CIP now, when budgeting starts in August, September, October, then they get a chance to bring it up and start talking about it. So the finance committee is going to look at this one way or the other. This is just a way to keep the project moving, number one. Tell the RDA it's time for you to start looking at fundraising mechanisms. Get it into the CIP so other people in the community start looking at it and understanding what it's going to take.
I guess my perspective on this is there is nothing that we're being asked to formally do through recommendation this evening that as it relates to integration between two plans by the city staff. They can do that on their own. They don't need our recommendation to do that. The point is, what type of official status do we want to give this, and how are we going to get there? The impression that somehow, we're delegating to the city staff a financial integration task, I don't see that we're adding very much to that. I think what we should do is to say, we like this plan. We want to move forward with it in a specific manner that will bring it to a realistic starting point and move from work that the city staff can do to what it is that's going to put that formal status in place. And that is to say that what we would be asking is that the city staff produce a draft of their recommended capital improvement plan for review by the plan commission, for review by the finance committee. That is what's going to give it a meaningful status. And that's, to me, moving substantially farther ahead than we are right now. The staff integrating this into the capital improvement plan on our recommendation doesn't do any more than you could do completely on your own. And I don't see that it gives it any enhanced status. I'd like to try to put this in a position where it is sanctioned by a review by the finance committee. And that's something that they regularly do on an annual basis, refine the capital improvement plan, which with the draft that you could put together, integrating these two together, I think it would be a good working document for future expectation.
I think one thing I want to understand would be the timeline on that. I know in May, we do a kind of an internal review of the CIP to kind of start to get ready for the budget cycle. So would this committee, if you do go that way, would you be looking for me to bring that to finance committee? You know, obviously time's running out for the current body with the election coming up. I mean, would you be looking for that in April, if I could even get that from the finance director, or would you be looking for that in
What I
May,
would
or-
envision in terms of that timeline is that you could complete your review or the integration of the two plans into a singular document, the draft of the capital improvement plan, and then have it ready for whatever is the new finance committee, which typically is going to be in place, if not by the middle of April, it's certainly by the end of April.
Okay. Was kind of thinking out loud, and, you know, I obviously Mark Stevens isn't here tonight, so I don't want to commit other staff for, you know, work that, you know, I don't know his capacity, but I mean, I understand what you're asking. I understand the philosophy behind it.
Do you want to formulate that into a motion, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, if you could put that original document or last frame back, I think we can work off of what it was you were requesting.
There we go.
There we go, what we asking.
I think the only thing you're changing is you could,
Um,
after that first sentence, just and present to
Well-
the city finance committee.
Yes, that we request the city staff integrate the Rock River District infrastructure components into the city's capital improvement plan as a draft for review by the finance committee.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there support?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? I'm still writing, sorry. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Nice job, Mason and RDA.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and we'll get to work on that. Appreciate the time and the support for, you know, kind of just not memorializing, but making this project official. I
Well, this
appreciate that.
reflects a tremendous amount of work.
Yep.
Obviously, the RDA over a prolonged period of time, and the work by you and engineering and others, just what you put together for our meeting tonight was tremendously helpful. And what this ultimately shows us is a vision that is really impressive, that is just a matter of finding out the best sequence for doing it within the scope of realistic financial capabilities year by year.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mason. All right, let's move on to item C, review and take possible action, award 2027 and 2028 annual street and utility design project to Capur for $172,581.
27.
Oh, did I read that wrong?
Yeah, that's the way it's
I
described
typed it
here.
wrong, sorry.
Yep.
My
You're
apologies.
skipping 28.
27 and 29 annual street and utility design project. Nathan, are you up again?
Yes. So similar to the 2028 Library Street project, we went out for RFP, request for proposals for this project, and the Public Works Department received, evaluated, and ranked all of the proposals submitted for the 2027 and 2029 annual street and utility design project. This included design for street reconstruction, storm sewer replacement, water main replacement, accessibility upgrades, and a drainage study for that area as it frequently floods. It also includes side streets, Baxter Street, Depot Street, and Warren Street from Lafayette to Main Street. So a pretty big project area. And after ranking these proposals through the QBS system, the Public Works Department recommends awarding this design contract to Kapor Inc. for a lump sum of $172,581.
Gentlemen, questions?
You want a motion?
I would,
I
please.
would make a motion that we approve this recommendation. Obviously, a resolution is going to go to the council, but that we recommend the passage of the award to Captor Incorporated for the $172+.
Is there support? Mr. Wetzel,
I have a
any other comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Go.
So I've lived here my whole life in Watertown. I did not know we had a Baxter Street until I read this.
Yeah, it's a little dead end street off of Lafayette Street. Yeah, it's kind of chucked back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a main artery. Yeah,
Does-
trust me.
Does
I've
that
been
have infrastructure, Baxter Street, at this point?
It does. It's a narrow right of way and the pavement is pretty narrow. Drainage isn't great and the water main is old, so we'd be looking to
Same thing with Depot Streat? Is there,
Depot Street. It's a narrow right of way again. It's currently gravel and it's one that we grade.
but it has storm
couple of times a
sewer
year.
and
Yep.
all of that in there already?
Not currently, but we'd be looking to make some improvements with this project.
Good. Thanks.
We use it a lot.
You guys do, yeah. I
We do.
started looking at it. I realized.
All right, any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, our next item of business is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Bartz? For support? I'll support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are done at 6:34.
I suppose that's like the back door into the hub of all the Maranatha activity. Baxter Street, but yeah, in the same area, right? Yeah, Depot.